going? Hi, everyone. My name is Danielle Keiser, and I am a women's health educator, consultant, and coach focused on menstrual health and menopause or perimenopause. I come to you today with 13 years of experience working in the women's health field, really helping start to grow the menstrual health movement back in 2013. I started Global Menstrual Hygiene Day, which is celebrated on the 28th of May every year, started a nonprofit called the Menstrual Health Hub, and have been supporting the likes of UNICEF and a couple of other femtech startups. I am an IPHM certified menstrual health and cycle coach, and I have also worked in the Museum of European Culture here in Berlin, Germany, on the official menstruation exhibition that unfortunately ended this year, and have also worked in client settings and corporate settings to talk about menstruation and menopause in the workplace, along with other women's health topics with The Body Shop, Johnson and Johnson, Einhorn, which is a German condom and period product company, Flo, who you may know as a menstrual tracker, the Wikimedia Foundation, Essity, which makes period products, Bayer, which you probably know, making pharmaceuticals, SoundCloud most recently, and then, of course, Clue, which is also a menstrual tracker. So, people like to call me the menstrual Swiss Army knife because I can talk about it in so many different ways. And of course, it's really important that we talk about menstrual health if we are going to understand anything about perimenopause. So that is kind of the direction that we are going to take today. So first, I would love to hear from you in the chat. What brought you here today? I know that people are coming from different places, different ages, and it's really difficult to create a one-size-fits-all presentation because some of you may already be in perimenopause, some of you may be very far from perimenopause, and so please do accept my apologies if I am not able to cover everything, because then we would be sitting here for many, many, many hours. But I am very curious what you would like to what brought you to this webinar and what attracted you in the first place. So if you could just share some things in the chat, that would be lovely. And we can keep moving. So today I'm going to give you a foundational context of what is menstrual health. Then we will move on to kind of some nerdy scientific information about hormones, what they are, what they do, kind of demystify the roles that they play in our lives and all the ways that they influence what we do. Then we can talk about early symptoms and symptoms of perimenopause in general and what to kind of look out for and know that you're not strange or feeling like, oh, what's wrong with me? But that aging is a natural part of life and we cannot stay young forever. So accepting that we are getting older as well. I'm going to share some other considerations because no person has the same experience. Every single body will experience something different depending on their health history, their family history, their lifestyle factors, their heritage, their stress levels. And so it's important that we really make sure that we understand that no two people will have the same experience. And then at the end, I want to share some information with you about how you can start to craft your personal game plan, especially if you are pre-perimenopausal and still a cycling individual. If you are already in perimenopause or menopause, it's not too late. You can still do some great things to mitigate some symptoms or surrender to the process a little bit more. So here we go. So it's important that we talk about the fact that over the course of the female life course, there are certain rites of passage that our patriarchal society has swept under the rug and disregarded as unimportant. And as female-bodied people who have created all life on Earth, all human life at least, caring for families, for animals, for each other, it's really important that we revive these important rites of passage. So one of them, of course, is our birth when we entered this world. And then as we mature, we have our first rite of passage, which is the menarche, which is the first period, which happens between 8 and 12 years of age. And then the next rite of passage is our sexual debut. So the first time that we have sex, like either with ourselves or with another person. This usually happens between 14 and 21 years old. And this is an important memory and experience because it does shape the rest of our lives. And whether it's traumatic or not, can really shape the course of our sexual and reproductive health as we move forward. Then we have another rite of passage, which is pregnancy, and that comes also with loss and pregnancy loss, which is certainly not discussed enough in our society and not given the social care that it deserves. And then after that, perhaps subsequent pregnancies or childbearing. And then we have a rite of passage, which is the perimenopausal transition, as it is called, or the menopausal transition. And then we have actual menopause, which is what I'll explain as one moment in time. I'll explain that on the next slide. And then we have our active aging or our postmenopausal times. But these are all, especially menarche, our sexual debut, pregnancy, and the menopausal transition. These are critical rites of passage that we have to regain that has been lost over hundreds and thousands of years of patriarchal rule, and kind of accepting that these are not terrible things, but they are actually really important transitions in our lives, is one way of kind of easing into the experience of being in a female body. So one of the things I like to say about perimenopause and the menopausal transition is that this is the opportunity for us to be taking an involuntary PhD program. What do I mean by that? So, after so many years of living on this earth, 40 years or so, 35 to 50 years, we will have done a lot of things. We will have met a lot of people and had a lot of experiences, maybe worked a lot and cared a lot for other people and relationships. And so this is really this involuntary PhD program that we have to go through on our journey to become wise women, or crones as an archetype. And whether we want to accept this PhD program or not, we kind of have to go through it. And what that actually looks like is divorcing ourselves from the way that patriarchal society has conditioned us of the values in life. So youth and beauty and being thin, all of these things kind of keep us small and keep us feeling like we're not enough, rather than accepting our fate, which is to become the wise women that future generations can look up to and be supported by as they endeavor into their female health life course. So I would love for you to sit with this idea that we have a wise woman inside all of us, and there is work to be done in this PhD program. Okay, so let's start with some basic definitions. What is menopause? So a lot of people say menopause is the whole process, but actually it's not. And it's important that we get the language right. Menopause is a point in time 1 year after your last period. So just like your first period happened one day, April 12th, 1992 or whatever, you will have a bookend on the opposite side of your reproductive life. That is the menopause. So this is kind of like an anniversary of 12 months of not bleeding. And the reason it is called menopause is because you're pausing the bleeding, and maybe not having periods for a few months. You could not have a period for 11 months and then it comes back, and then we have to wait all over again for this 1 year to pass. So menopause is one point in time, and the years that are leading up to it are called the menopause transition or perimenopause. So this is important because language shapes the world around us, and it's important that we know what we're talking about when we're talking about what we're talking about. And for 1 in 100 people who menstruate, this happens before the age of 40, but usually happens around the age of 40 to 50. And the average time that someone goes into menopause, like having that final period, is 51 years old. So it is also a clinical diagnosis that can be received from a healthcare provider, and that's based on blood tests, hormone levels, and a variety of other symptoms. And this would then make you able to access hormone therapy, for example, or other prescribed medications that could help you in any symptoms that you're having. So I want to dive a little bit into what is the menstrual cycle, because this is absolutely crucial for us to understand if we're going to understand menopause. And so this graphic here is something that I created because all the menstrual cycle educational tools online use this like linear version of the menstrual cycle going across. And so looking at it as a round cycle as something that happens over and over and over is really important. And so within the menstrual cycle, we have these dots, which are the 21 to 36 days of a normal menstrual cycle. And they are this is defined by a day one here, which is this red dot. And this is the period here, which lasts between 3 to 7 days. And that is the first phase of the menstrual cycle. That's called the menstrual phase or menstruation. That's one we all know. As we move out of this menstrual phase, we move into what is called the follicular phase. And the follicular phase is when the follicle that is generating an egg for ovulation starts to really get kind of pumped up, and that's because of estrogen. Estrogen is one of the most important hormones in our menstrual cycle, and also the one that starts to decline in our perimenopausal years. And estrogen is responsible for making us feel energetic. It's responsible for starting to build up the uterine lining so that that egg, should it be fertilized, has a nice home for pregnancy over the next 9 months. And as we move into this follicular phase, we might see higher energy levels, more actual like transfer of information in the brain. Estrogen really helps so many different aspects of our entire body, from brain health to bone health to skin health. And I can talk a little bit about that later. The third phase is called the ovulatory phase, or the ovulation. And this is a transition event from the first half of the menstrual cycle to the second half of the menstrual cycle. And this is the time where we are fertile and able to conceive or get pregnant. And this is something that is defined by a hormonal kind of meeting of points, right? The estrogen and the testosterone, which is signified here by the orange testosterone and estrogen being the pink. They are working together to release this egg and potentially fertilize by if meeting a sperm. If this doesn't happen, which is most of the case, then our bodies move into a what is called the luteal phase, or the fourth phase of the menstrual cycle, which is when the opposite hormone to estrogen starts to become more dominant. And during this first half of the luteal phase, which I call the early luteal phase, our bodies are kind of tricked into thinking that we're pregnant, because that egg is kind of attaching itself to the side of the uterine wall and waiting for a sperm to come. In the meantime, progesterone, which is a hormone here, is starting to maintain that uterine lining for the potential embryo, for the potential fetus. And right around this time here, which is the peak of progesterone around days 25 or 26. The body realizes it's not pregnant and it's not going to move forward with the pregnancy because no sperm was there to fertilize the egg. And what then happens is progesterone starts to decline in the deep luteal phase. And this happens between around days 23 to 30, although that's variable per person. So what we have here is a cycle of 5 phases: the menstrual phase, the follicular phase, the ovulatory phase, and then the luteal phase broken down into early luteal and deep luteal, which really kind of, define what our month is like. This means that we can be 5 different personalities in one month because each phase reveals a different aspect of who we are. So this is really important to understand because in the female health journey, these two hormones, estrogen or estradiol, which is E2, the dominant form of estrogen that is available that our bodies produce during our reproductive lives, starts to really increase in puberty, which is, we were all there. We all remember having maybe breakouts on our skin, growing our boobs, having frizzy hair or oily face. It's because our hormones were kind of adjusting to us becoming adults. Menopause and perimenopause can be likened to like a second or a reverse puberty. And as you can see here with the estrogen levels, they are almost twice as high, if not definitely higher in this second or reverse puberty than they are in the entire menstrual cycle, like career. So you will experience the highest peaks in estrogen as well as the lowest peaks in estrogen during this reverse puberty, which can feel very, very intense and overwhelming for a lot of people, while at the same time we see progesterone also decreasing as well. And usually what happens is progesterone starts to leave the body first and estrogen afterwards. And this kind of rapid increase and decline in estrogen is what is responsible for a lot of the symptoms that we experience during perimenopause. So to get you having a better idea of what some of these sex hormones are like, I've made a celebrity analogies so that they can stick in your brain a little bit more. So throughout the menstrual cycle, we have actually 5 main hormones. The 3 I discussed already, but then we also have 2 called FSH, which is follicle stimulating hormone, and luteinizing hormone as well. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what these do now. So we can think of estrogen as having Lizzo energy. Lizzo is a popular singer who is all about body positivity. She's really energetic. She's all about self-love. And she is full of good energy. And what this does in our bodies, estrogen, it promotes like muscle growth and strength. It helps regulate inflammation in the body, controls the body temperature, helps manage blood sugar, helps regulate our appetite, manages moods, and supports our skin, especially vaginal skin, as well as our skin all over the rest of our body, hair and bone health. And so estrogen is important to understand because if it's left unchecked, meaning we are super stressed out or are creating too much estrogen, especially in the second half of our cycles, it can create a lot of drama in our lives. Estrogen also plays a key role in our metabolic functions. And so that's why when we are starting to lose our estrogen, we're starting to see our metabolism slow down and see things like weight gain, especially around the midsection. Progesterone, on the other hand, is kind of the opposite of this Lizzo energy and has more of like an introverted Billie Eilish energy. So it counterbalances this estrogen to kind of tone down some of that expansive energy and really embodies more of a contracting energy. What it does is it increases the connective tissue stability. It protects the brain. And in most cases, for neurotypical individuals, it produces a calming anti-anxiety effect. It can also provide pain relief and building bone. It can regulate the heart rate variability. So it helps us bring us back into parasympathetic nervous system activation and also helps maintain our body temperature. So progesterone and estrogen do this beautiful kind of dance every single month and have a lot of effects and influence on pretty much everything that we do, from our behaviors to our our tastes to our sleep to everything. Yeah, hormones play a huge role. Testosterone, oh, that's supposed to say testosterone on the top. Testosterone can be likened to Serena Williams, right? It's strong, it's determined, it's really prevalent in our male counterparts, right? Like testosterone is what drives their daily productivity and energy cycles. And so in the middle of our menstrual cycle, we have an increase in testosterone or like a spike in testosterone. We also have a little spike in testosterone right before our periods or at the beginning of our periods. So if some of you feel more libido around your period time, this is exactly why. Thanks, Serena. Testosterone helps regulate or give us libido, sexual function, arousal, and orgasmic intensity. It also helps maintain lean muscle and metabolic health, helping us grow our muscle and be strong. It also helps with mental clarity and confidence, supporting our ability to process information, motivation, assertiveness. It also protects our skeletal strength and plays a role in like bone health and joint health. And then also helps combat fatigue and enables us to be a little bit more emotionally resilient. So it's great when testosterone is around in that middle part of our cycle here. Oops, here in the middle, you see that spike, that little orange nipple, so to say, right at the bottom, and then right before our periods at the top or in the first part of our period, which is when we kind of feel that release when our period comes and the emotional stability starts to come back into play. So the two other hormones I want to briefly touch on are FSH and LH. So FSH on the right-hand side is kind of like the ultimate manager, right? So we can kind of compare this to Kris Jenner, who is the mother of the Kardashians. She really like ignites the cycle, gets things going, gets the follicle growing, and sets the stage for ovulation. This is kind of what really pushes off when we get our period to start a new cycle. She's always working behind the scenes to really make the whole cycle happen. And LH, which is luteinizing hormone, this is like someone who, or a hormone that brings the drama. So I like to think of her a little bit like Lady Gaga, because she triggers the most important moment and has this kind of show-stopping role once a month to make sure that this egg is released in like a spectacular way. And this is why ovulation is actually the most important event in the whole menstrual cycle, because it is the actual sign of our fertility. So that was menstrual cycle 101 a little bit to give you an understanding of the hormones. Now let's talk a little bit about the timeline of menopause. So before perimenopause begins, like pre-perimenopause, our cycles are usually regular, right? So not everybody has regular cycles, but they are more regular and things are coming pretty predictably every month. If we have pain, we kind of know when it comes. And we are not having cycles that are all over the place. Perimenopause is first observed by the onset of irregular periods. So if your periods are starting to become more irregular by more than 7 days, so that means like 16 days or 40 days that it has not come or is coming too often, this can be one of the earliest signs of perimenopause. And there is an early perimenopause and a later perimenopause. And this whole process can last around 3 to 10 years. So I hesitate to give exact numbers because everybody is so different, but there is like a distinction between whether you've skipped a period in this time. And if this has happened, like a whole 2 months has happened without a period, this then kind of qualifies you to be in the later perimenopause. So it's really important to become an investigative journalist of your own body and listen to your body's signals and the things that are happening and how things are changing, because this will help you navigate and sit in the driver's seat of your own journey. So, as I had mentioned, menopause itself is 12 months after the very last period. And after that, we have postmenopause. And this is can last for about a year, up to 3 years of symptoms kind of starting to wane down, those hot flashes or insomnia or other major symptoms that had bother us are going to kind of go away. And that's because our hormones, I want to go back to this slide, our hormones creep back down to around the same levels that they were when we were children. So our estrogen, we produce a little bit of it. Progesterone goes way down low, and that's why we are experiencing no more symptoms in our older age of menopause. So menopause, perimenopause is a full body experience. It's physical, it's physiological, it's psychological, and it's emotional. So it affects our central nervous system, it affects our liver, it affects our sexual function, it affects our reproductive and urogenital. So that's like anything having to do with our urinary and uterine areas. It affects our hair, skin, and nails. It affects our ability to metabolize, and it can come with some insulin resistance as well, because it will lower our good cholesterol and raise our LDL cholesterols, and it can also bring higher triglycerides and inflammation, which plays a big role in our metabolic health, and also affect arterial function. It affects our weight, as I had mentioned, where there's increased visceral fat and adiposity in the body because there's not so much estrogen and progesterone that are kind of helping manage our weight throughout our menstrual cycles. And it's also musculoskeletal. So this means that there can be pains and aches in the shoulders, frozen shoulder, for example, or just kind of feeling it the way that you might feel in your deep luteal or your premenstrual phase, kind of like this heaviness in your joints. This might become more common as we just continue to get old. We live in a society that like rejects aging, but I got news for you. We are all going to die. Sorry to say. And so much of this education is about acceptance of the fact that we are not going to live forever, and our bodies just do change as we get older. So there are 50 menopause symptoms that I'm going to talk about, but I think that the official list says that there's something like 87, and they can be really interesting, from like burning tongue to dry nose and dry mouth, to insomnia and allergies, brittle nails, kind of all falling into these categories I had shared. But everybody has a little bit of a different experience, and that's why it's really important that we talk about our experiences with other people so that we can kind of learn and, oh, you're experiencing this. I'm not experiencing that, but I'm experiencing this. And being able to break the silence on what we're feeling also helps us feel less alone. So the early symptoms of perimenopause, maybe the most common ones, are these irregular periods, hot flashes and or night sweats, and this is due to vasomotor dysregulation. So estrogen helps regulate our temperature, and when the estrogen is going up and down really fast, kind of like pressing the gas really fast and then taking your foot off of it, It can confuse our hormone headquarters, which is the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland, which help regulate our temperature. And so this is why it can literally feel like we're burning because our kind of a temperature gauge is slowly changing, not breaking, but just changing. Also, stubborn weight gain, insomnia, or having sleep disturbances in general, brain fog, forgetfulness, and just less sharpness in thoughts, a lot of like forgetting of words, and then increases in anxious thoughts or depressive behaviors. All of these are extremely normal, and some people will experience one of them, some will experience none of them, some will experience all of them. It doesn't mean you will, but it is good to know that there is a portfolio of things to see if are resonating in your experience. As I had mentioned, the causes of hot flashes really happens with this sudden lack of estrogen, confusing the hypothalamus, and it's like tricking the body into thinking that it's overheating, which is why it triggers this reaction to calm down. So, or to cool down. If we have pre-existing conditions around our thyroid, or we have some of these other kinds of pre-existing chronic disorders like hypoglycemia, these can also trigger or intensify some hot flashes. So just good things to know about. Um, Risk factors around hot flashes being more intense can be if we are obese or of a very unhealthy BMI, smoking, tobacco specifically, and our ethnicity. There's a number of studies that show that people in some cultures experience perimenopause earlier or worse. The statistics from the United States are very different from other parts of the world, based on kind of the culture of exercise or food quality, and physical activity, as I had mentioned. And then also our lifestyle factors of stress and anxiety and trauma. So much of new research is focused on how trauma has early in life can really affect our premenstrual behaviors and also kind of forecast our perimenopausal experience, especially if we had any sexual trauma early in life. I'm happy to share some exciting research around that. That's a bit sobering. And then these triggers are smoking, particularly warm environments, or very humid environments. Sometimes spicy food can really trigger that. Binge eating, and having like lots of calories at once. Stimulants like caffeine can intensify hot flashes, and sudden bouts of stress, or kind of like when you get hit with some kind of like thing you have to deal with really fast, can also confuse the hypothalamus into overheating and wanting to cool down the body. This is really interesting when we talk about the neurological effects of the brain. So the brain is actually physically, just like the rest of our body, changing. And it is not a bad change. It is almost like filtering through your whole life thus far and figuring out what it no longer needs. And so you can actually see that in before menopause, we have a lot more like active areas of the brain. And after menopause, there's a fundamental change or a shift, where in those like super active areas. It's not necessarily a bad thing. People look at this slide and get a bit freaked out by it. And it's mostly to show that there is a holistic restructuring of our everything during this transition. And we can't go on thinking like business is normal. I am going to be fine. We're all going to be fine. Of course, we're aging, but we're going to be a different version of ourselves, and hopefully a better one at that. So I wanted to make some small comments about like other considerations that are important to know. So histamine has been coming up a lot in the research recently. Histamine sensitivity is when someone has like a tendency towards allergies. So if you're like allergic to everything, you're really sensitive to pollen, This can contribute to perimenopausal symptoms like the night sweats, anxiety, sleep disturbances, fluid retention, and breast pain. And that's because the big estrogen spikes of perimenopause can actually trigger a histamine release. So if you're someone who does suffer from allergies, it might be interesting to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole and research mast cell activation and learn more about if this applies to you. And then trying to do a little like elimination diet or a test to see if you avoid things like red wine or aged cheeses or certain things like tomatoes, which are high in histamine, if those symptoms kind of go down. So there's a great article there from Lara Bryden that kind of goes deeper into high histamine. And if you see in this graph again, estrogen is already kind of at its highest point during the perimenopause, and the big spikes in estrogen caused by the histamine can just intensify and create a kind of disbalance. I want to say a little about ADHD and neurodiversity in general. So there's a lot of great new research just in the last like 2 to 5 years that is connecting intergenerational trauma and suppressed emotions and family cycles of unprocessed trauma into ADHD research, which can mean that if someone has ADHD, their perimenopausal symptom, no, so let me say this right. ADHD symptoms will become worse and more pronounced in perimenopause because of the way in which the body is metabolizing certain hormones. So it's not like you have more or less estrogen, it's the sensitivity in the fluctuations to those hormones in the body. And the ways that progesterone, for example, is metabolized in a ADHD brain or a neurodiverse brain versus a neurotypical brain. And this has a lot to do with GABA, which is a receptor that brings about that calm. And what can happen a lot of the case is instead of the calming effects of progesterone that happen in the luteal phase, a lot of ADHD people can feel an intense sense of anxiety, and maybe even their ADHD medication doesn't work as well. And so this has a lot to do with the nervous system and an unregulated nervous system and a kind of history of chronic stress and chronically being in a hyperactivated sympathetic nervous system state. And so we could have a whole webinar on this, and there are experts in the network who probably are going to do this in the future and have already. But the hot tips here I have are if we are experiencing ADHD, we have a diagnosis, and we know perimenopause is coming, it's really important for us to be dealing with our traumas and actually doing that really hard work psychologically and somatically, which means working with the body, because the body is where trauma is actually stored, even if it is a painful process. But this is part of that involuntary PhD program that we have to do in order to become wise women and deal with our stuff. A great tip is also to practice daily nervous system regulation. So breath work, yoga, meditation, everyone has a different way to find their own chill, and what works for some people doesn't work for for everyone. So just making sure that there's a mindfulness practice that can help really regulate the nervous system is very important. Another consideration is around PMDD. I kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier. PMDD is a premenstrual dysphoric disorder, and this is when the luteal phase becomes really unbearable, and this affects 1 in 20 people. It can cause intense amounts of anxiety, and that's because progesterone is not being metabolized into the other transmitters that create that calming effect. So if this is something that sounds like you, it also think about doing a little bit of research, and ask for additional support. There's a lot of new specialists who focus on PMDD, coaches in particular, and there's a lot of new clinics that are starting to really take this condition seriously. Thank goodness. There's going to be a whole webinar on sex and perimenopause, but I do want to say a few things about it. That there could be both a loss of libido and an increase in libido, and that is nonlinear. So it could be in the beginning, your libido is gone, and then it comes back with a force, and then it could be gone again. It can be like really unpredictable. And that is, again, because of these hormonal fluctuations, and it's totally normal. There is also changes to the vaginal tissue, like within the vagina, and then also in the vulva area as well. And that's because there's less estrogen. So our vaginas become less hydrated and less full of collagen. And that's because we're having less estrogen in our bodies, which is sometimes why people will take vaginal estrogen, so transdermal, very low percentage estrogen that is kind of inserted into the vagina to kind of help keep it moist and happy for sex and just happy for us in general, for our self-pleasure. And then incontinence can also play a role here because our pelvic floors and our uterine infrastructure starts to become weakened, especially if we've had children and haven't done pelvic floor exercises to keep our pelvic floor strong yet. There are people that can work on this and help us with this. And I know some amazing, amazing people who have really benefited from pelvic floor therapy. So some hot tips around this, which I think our future coach will elaborate on as well. Maca is a really great herb that can help with lifting the libido and having a regular pleasure practice. It's an herb we can take. Wouldn't take it all the time every day, but it's something you can do a little bit more research on for yourself and see if it's a good fit. And practicing good posture. So when we have good posture and we have this connection breath, it helps facilitate a better connection to our root chakra, or where our sexual organs are. So when we're going like this all the time, or we're kind of hunched over, we're not really like having good internal infrastructure. So, just reminders to kind of stay present, connect deep within us when we're doing our meditations. And this overall can help us with some of these sex-related perimenopause symptoms. Alcohol. Alcohol is risky business in the perimenopausal transition. And that's because it amplifies symptoms, and we are not able to metabolize it as well as we once did when we were younger if we drink alcohol at all. So alcohol increases estrogen and impairs liver detox because our liver needs to detox alcohol, any medications that we take, the food that we eat. And so it's really, can play a detrimental role, and it just doesn't really help much, although we might think it does. It also sends our blood sugar on a roller coaster, which can increase mood swings and cravings, which can lead to more irritability, more fatigue, and more PMS-like symptoms, especially for those that have neurodiversity, ADHD diagnoses, or pre-existing insulin sensitivity. And it also really messes with our sleep. So even like 1 to 2 drinks, which we maybe were able to handle no problem in our 20s and 30s, really can impair REM sleep, increase our cortisol, which can wake us up in the middle of the night, and overall, just make sure that our sleep is not in a good way. So track how even small amounts of alcohol affect your symptoms. Swap your alcohol consumption maybe to once a week, or start to make delicious cocktails or adaptogens like maca, or certain types of mushrooms, or other herbs can give us similar feelings of being relaxed, or having like herbal tonics that also make us feel like we're drinking something delicious, but don't have that damaging effect on us. I want to talk a little bit in these last few minutes. Actually, Gulzar, is we have how much time do we have left? I'm wondering what I should race through or not.
We have 10 more minutes.
Okay. So quickly talk about the types of hormone replacement therapy that one can seek out when when and if they want it. So there's oral therapy, which is pills and tablets. There's vaginal, which I had talked about before, which is creams, rings, and pessaries. Pessaries are objects that we stick up into the vagina to help kind of keep the pelvic floor in place and help with incontinence. And then there's transdermal. So that's like patches, implants, sprays, gels, things that we can put on our body. So those are kind of, when you go to talk to your healthcare provider, if this is something that you want, you can talk about which of these options could be best for you. So when we're talking about the type of hormone replacement therapy, there's synthetic versus bioidentical. The synthetic is used to be something called Premarin, which is made from horse pee, literally, and this is conjugated estrogens. This is something that has proven to be quite effective when dosed correctly, to help people experience less symptoms in the perimenopausal transition. Then there's also more natural sources like wild yams, which are not as like, don't have as high of a concentration of these kinds of estrogen. But as I said, everyone is very different on their journey. Some are more open to taking therapeutic pills or creams. Others would like to take a more natural route. And so there's a lot that is available to explore. As we kind of move forward, I think it's important to think about um, how to understand our pillars of vitality. So this is the way I work. I have these 7 pillars of vitality as part of my methodology that are kind of 5 of them are non-negotiables: nutrition, movement, nervous regulation, sleep, and toxic burden. That means exposing ourselves to potentially having chemicals in our water, the foods that we eat, the creams that we put on our face. All of these things have a direct effect on our health, and um, understanding that 5 of these pillars, nutrition, movement, nervous system regulation, sleep, and toxic burden, are things we have to take care of, or else we will be seeing dysregulation. There's 2 others that are kind of up to you to decide as your own pillars of vitality, whether that's creativity, pleasure, connection, community, nature, whatever. This is just so that you can understand that from a holistic perspective, even if we're eating great and we're not doing any of the other things, chances are we're still going to be needing some help. So how I work usually is I'll do a deep dive of your health history and your family history, an assessment of your symptoms, and really want to look at what you're eating every day in a food, mood, and poop journal. And then we would work together for 12 weeks. I start with an art project, an intake session, and then throughout the time together, we have 5 sessions, 4 being kind of like check-in sessions, and then 1 optional somatic womb healing meditation session, and then personalized resources if you did want to work together long-term and get to know each other and have me support you. This is how we can connect if you would like to learn more and go deeper into menstrual cycle health, perimenopausal preparation, and get you in a good way. You can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram. I have a newsletter and an email. You can use this QR code to get directly connected to me via the Mirana app. And I give one-on-one coaching, of course, but I also do workshops and speaking opportunities for companies, for big groups, online or in person, and single sessions as well, and advice in any of these realms. Here are some more resources that you can check out if you are interested in learning more. And yeah, I would like to stop there. And I see there's a number 19 on the chat, but I have not looked in it because I've been talking so much. So I'm gonna put my mic down there and stop sharing my screen so that we can all join together.
Thank you, Danielle, so much. It was amazing. It was incredible. So much very useful knowledge. And I have collected around 3 questions that I would like to read out loud so that they can get answered before we wrap up today's session, since we do have 4 more minutes. So the first question was that I'll cite it. So my question is about default supplements for women who are in perimenopause or near it.
Great question. So every person is different, and it's really hard to make a blanket statement on what uh, women need. But it is really important that we incorporate like the main micro and macronutrients in our bodies, and that includes B vitamins, magnesium, zinc, and omega-3s. So I would say that starting off with those are kind of like the basic things that we should make sure we're either eating a lot of in the foods that we have, or supplementing with a high quality supplement.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And the second question was about any lifestyle recommendations for people in their 30s and 40s that can help support the body later during perimenopause.
I love this question so much, and there are a lot of things that you can do, including realizing that we are not small men and our productivity and energy cycles are vastly different from the world that was set up and created for humans. So that means that in your luteal phase or your menstrual phase, it's really important to rest or say no to things or just tone it down a little bit. You're not a machine, and there are lots of expectations for you to do everything, but you cannot do everything. You can do anything, but you can't do everything. And so being able to really take that time to, for yourself, say no to certain engagements, especially if you are about to get your period or you're just not in the mood, listen to yourself. Your intuition is very strong, especially during menstruation. And taking that time to recharge your battery so that you can have an amazing next follicular phase and ovulatory phase is going to ensure that there's more balance in your energy levels. So that's the main one I always say. I also would like to say that drinking coffee on an empty stomach first thing in the morning is something that is going to create hormonal havoc. And coffee in and of itself is not bad, but it is good for us to have it if we do like it after eating a protein-rich meal in the morning or just after having breakfast so that it's not a stimulant that's directly going into our body. It's like we wouldn't have a big glass of vodka first thing in the morning. Having coffee, it doesn't do the exact same thing, but it's not the greatest on an empty stomach. So those would be my two tips.
Amazing. I would definitely start changing when I am intaking my coffee from now. Yeah. I have the last question that I'd like to read out loud. So, what if I'm on pills? How can I learn that I am perimenopausal?
Ooh, this is a really good question. So birth control pills, I'm assuming this is
Yeah.
what they mean. So, birth control pills and hormonal contraception in general are kind of preventing the natural sign of fertility from happening. And so it will be really difficult for you to know if you are going through perimenopause or not, because essentially you've paused your body from ovulating at all. So there is no real way to know. A lot of the times people will be put on birth control to prevent a lot of perimenopausal bleeding. And so we get into kind of a sticky area that is best handled by your healthcare provider when it comes to seeking out like hormonal contraceptives, if you need them for like either sexual protection or if you need it for another underlying issue.
Okay. Thank you, Danielle, very much. I think we have also, for all the participants, we have left a link to a form where you can leave your questions and receive answers. Since we are already out of time, we won't be able to receive all of them. Deep apologies for that, but we'll be happy to moderate and look through each of them if you leave them in the link below, which we have sent in the chat. I really would like to express amazing and fully gratitude to you, Danielle, for dedicating your time for this space with all of us so that we are all a bit more knowledgeable when we are going into the perimenopausal journey and learn more about our bodies and how to actually take care of ourselves, but also not going through it alone, but in a community like this where we have safe, shared spaces. So I really would like to say thank you, and thank you to all of the participants, to all of these beautiful women who have joined our shared space today. And do not forget that this is just the first session. We have 3 more coming up. So please join us with our amazing other coaches on topics of nutrition, intimacy. So we'll be more than happy to share that space with you all. And yeah, thank you very much, Danielle, once again.
There we go. It was such a pleasure. And if anyone wants to connect with me directly, LinkedIn is a great way to get connected. It was such a pleasure. I wish I got to like interact with you more, but maybe this is the start of a beautiful relationship. And I'm here if you want to ask any follow-up questions. I know there was a lot of chatter going on and I wasn't able to address it, but do know that there's answers, there's more people, keep talking about it, and don't be afraid to become the wise woman you're destined to be, okay? Sending you all so much love and
Thank you.
hope to stay in touch. Ciao.
Bye bye. Bye bye, everyone.